It's wonderful to be here, wonderful to be in conversation with Andy Blankenbuehler and welcoming this new work into the world. I just want to acknowledge Works Process for all they do for the dance field. Their partnership, their contributions to artists are extraordinary, and we're so grateful to partner with them. So thank you, Caroline. Thank you, Duke Dang. So our plan this evening is we're going to start with a bit of a conversation. Then we're going to see a section of the work. Then we're going to come back and talk a bit more, see another section, and that's our plan. So if you don't know Andy, he is an American dancer, choreographer, and director primarily of stage and concert work. He's been nominated for the Tony 5 times, and he's won it 3 times for In the Heights, Hamilton, and Bandstand. Woo-hoo! His other Broadway work includes 9 to 5, Bring It On the Musical, and the 2016 revival of Cats. Right now, he's working on a revival of the musical 9 for next season, and then the first revival of Kiss of the Spider Woman. So lots coming up. Alongside his work on Broadway, he is developing his own work, an 80-minute dance narrative, which is the subject of our presentation tonight. Andy's been a member of the Pillow family for over a decade. In 2012, at the invitation of Chet Walker, who directed the musical theater dance program in our school, he came to work with our dancers and he set the first act of Bandstand. The next year, he came back having just finished with the collaborators on the first act of Hamilton, and he set the choreography for the Battle of Yorktown on our dancers for the first time. So what a thrill for them to have that in their portfolios, that they did that with Andy Blankenbuehler. Fast forward to 2022. Andy returned to the Pillow for a celebration of the life of the iconic jazz master, Chet Walker. And he let me know that he was interested in developing his own dance theater piece, and we immediately invited him to have a Pillow Lab. It took a while to find the dates, and they happened to be last November, and we got to witness the first draft of the first section of this work. We released a short-form documentary today. It's part of our series Inside the Pillow Lab. It's on our website and on YouTube. It's produced by Nell Shelby Productions, and Nell is with us tonight. We'd like to just show you, Andy and I thought it would be great for you to see a teaser of this film so that you can see where the work was 2.5 months ago. So if we can roll the film, please.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Won't, boom, 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 boom. 5, 6, 7, 8, 1.
I've always had a real affinity towards World War II stories, and in particular, the humanity between singular World War II stories, not about battles, but about how one person experiences things. Like I always remind myself, don't make a piece about the post office, make a piece about one letter going through the post office. I wanted to find that within the scope of World War II. And I remember maybe 10 years ago, I saw a film. It was a radio operator on the submarine. He was catching a radio station, and hearing the melody like cracked his heart open because he so desperately wanted to be home, but he knew he was there fighting for home. About 8 years ago, I staged a version of this idea at a concert of emerging choreographers in Manhattan. Cut to earlier this year, I was really intent on continuing to work towards making a full-length dance narrative and started conversations with my good friend, Kate Quinn, who's a novelist. So we started to make a full-length piece. And could the submarine idea that I made 10 years ago somehow be a central core to this 80-minute musical or ballet? Completely poetic. Let's treat it as a concert dance piece, not a theater piece. And so that's what I'm here at the Pillow making. I have found in the wonderful shows that I've been blessed to work on, they're about real people. In the Heights, Bandstand, Hamilton, they're about real people crunched under extraordinary pressures. And what do you do under the pressure of something extraordinary? Our job, I feel, as makers is to create a heightened version of things that other people can understand, so the audience can really be moved in an evocative way. I would be thrilled if people found real truth and real humanity in my work, remembering, oh, I saw that show and I was able to communicate in a different way with somebody. I saw that show and I recognized my struggle. I saw that show and I recognized triumph in a way that felt familiar to me. If I can sort of be a mirror for the deeper personal issues that people go through, I will definitely feel like I've been successful.
So beautiful. Wow. So you give us a little bit of the story in the film, Andy. Could you just give us the arc of what the story is, please?
Yeah. First of all, thank you all so much for being here. Process involves a lot of things. Process involves a lot of being taken care of and being supportive and feeling safe as a creator. But it also takes a lot of feedback, whether it's from amazing collaborators like these dancers or trusted friends or your audience. Your audience is always the final scene partner, so thank you for being here with us tonight. Yeah, I think it was Das Boot, the movie Das Boot. There was a scene in it that I found really poignant. I've always loved submarine stories and World War II stories, and the sense of confinement, which I'm sure we'll talk about a lot tonight, is really interesting to me. I think in a musical or in any good story, there's so many parameters that shove down on the characters to then have to make bold choices. And so there was something about that setting in the submarine that I loved. And so at this great concert downtown called BC Beat, about 8 or so years ago, a group of us got together, and it was in a tiny space, and it was in the round, and we made this sort of 8-minute submarine thing with this radio operator who's sort of the lifeline to the world. Like, he hears the enemy where they can't see anything. He can hear the enemy ships, and he knows how far away they are or what direction they are, so he's sort of the lifeline. And in that imagining of the rotor, he was hearing swing drums, and he was hearing basically the dance hall where he wanted to be. He wanted the freedom to be back at home with the woman he loved, and he escaped, so to speak, the submarine to be with her for just a moment before going back to his sort of own personal hell. And so we did a piece down there, and it was great. It was a tremendous fun time, and the audience had a great time with it. I put it away. And then a couple years later, the Tulsa Ballet asked me to create something for them. So I made like a 14-minute version of that same number. And it was quite a different piece. It was much more poetic. It was bigger. It was there was more line to it, more length to it, and had a beautiful score by Greg Anthony Rassin, who arranged Bandstand. And the music was very much nostalgic and Americana, very Copland-esque. And I learned a lot as an artist from that piece, and it's done well for the company. They've loved doing it, and I've loved having them do it. But something about it was like a different me. It was a me from those years ago, and the story never left me. And I think good stories don't leave us; they just keep torturing us. And this story kept torturing me, but I didn't want to repair that version because I wasn't that person anymore. So I started from scratch about a year ago. And I said, you know what, I never recycle. It'd be so much easier if I could recycle my work a little bit. My friend Cindy Salgado said that. He said, recycle your own work. And so I said, could I take that submarine idea and put it in the middle of a show, make it the sort of dream ballet of a whole show? So Kate Quinn, who's a great novelist, and I started working on this piece about a female codebreaker at Bletchley Park in England who is fighting an invisible enemy and trying to crack the German submarine code in the summer of '43. And her husband is on a naval ship in the North Atlantic. They've signed an oath of secrecy, so neither one of them know they're on the same mission. They're on the exact same mission, fighting an unknown enemy and an enemy hidden in the dark. And so 80 minutes was too ambitious. And so I said, instead of making 80 minutes, let me just start with making a bigger version of the ballet. So we set out to make a 26-minute dance piece. And in my hopes, it's an exercise like how Fancy Free became On the Town. And so I said, let's create this very poetic piece, and let's push ourselves as artists to be less text-related and maybe more poetry-related than my normal sort of work. And then we made this great partnership at The Pillow to start the first 14 minutes. So we made the first 14 minutes at The Pillow, and we've made about the next 13 minutes this past week.
Great. So you are such a busy Broadway director, choreographer. Why is it important for you to find space to develop your own work?
I've been really, really lucky, with the projects that I've done, but also mostly the people that I've worked with.
And there's been a lot of groundbreakers. Like when we started Heights and then getting into Hamilton and Bring It On in between, like we weren't trying to change the form. We loved the form and we just had our own voice. So we made the thing that we loved just true to our own voice. But being around people like that is like, it's an unbelievable thing. Everybody's at the top of their game, and you just see the ground shifting under you. And so you come to realize that yesterday's rules are not today's rules. And so for me as an artist, I love the theater, but part of me wants to keep asking the question of like, how can storytelling change? Like, how can projection design tell stories in different ways? How can choreography blend with light? How can poetry of text actually become text that's on the walls that the audience is forced to perceive in different ways? And so in asking myself these questions about how to push the boundaries a little bit, but also challenge myself, I'm not done challenging myself. I sort of gave myself the challenge of being a little bit more in the concert dance world, which I'm totally freaked out nervous about, very insecure about it all, but saying how can I be as poetic as I can within a story that's as linear as it can be.
What's the insecurity about, Andy?
I've always been detail and story and character related first and foremost. And so I never made it my priority to work on my line, frankly, to stay in class long enough to have a vocabulary that's hugely vast. I know as a storyteller, I have a wide vocabulary, but I feel like as a dance maker, I wonder if I have a very wide vocabulary. So my process then is imagining the huge wide vocabulary in my head and then needing amazing dancers like these amazing dancers we're going to see tonight to say, I view it this way, I feel it that way, and they can help me say things that I didn't know I could say.
Great, and I will say the dancers are remarkable. Could you talk about, you're not a person with the company, so when you decide to do a piece like this, how did you assemble these dancers? Where did they come from?
There's something to be said in our business. That you continue relationships. And I've been so blessed to have this influx of new people and returning older collaborations. And those older collaborations are so important because you don't have to finish the sentences. They finish the sentences for you. Like, there's dancers here who, they'll know when I'm not dancing like a person. Like, they'll know when I'm dancing like stress or like water. Like, I won't have to say, okay, you should feel like water here. They just know that I went there, and they follow. And that sort of invisible, unspoken partnership is a big deal. And every time I'm on a new project, there's new people who join the fold, new people who join the family. And I love versatility, but number one, like I love real people, like humanity and people who can, and I'm not talking about acting, I'm just talking about people who can access like realness and truth. And doing that in dance isn't always easy, because we work so hard on technique, we work so hard on the form, that it's very easy to let our concentration go on the final picture, as opposed to the impetus underneath of it, the motivation underneath of it. And so I think that people who I've developed long-standing relationships can channel both things at the same time.
And who's in the creative space with you? Who are your other collaborators besides the dancers?
Yeah, I have to say that working in this world in a more sort of concert dance thrust for me is different, because it naturally eliminates collaborators. I'm by myself a lot, which is hard, because then I have to be like 6 people at the same time and ask myself hard questions so that I can edit as I go. But then I try to bring in collaborators, like some of these dancers here know me so well, like I can look in somebody's eyes and like, yeah, that wasn't good. And I'll just know if something works or if it doesn't work. But on this piece in particular, so I did a lot of work up front with Kate, who's the novelist, and we developed a big story based on several of her novels. She wrote a novel about called The Rose Code, about a code breaker. And we sort of found a world, and then I said to Kate, okay, I'm gonna leave your world for a second, and I'm gonna make first a 26-minute piece about a man in a submarine. And so then I was on my own, but I could have her to lean on to say, would this person really do this? And so there was a collaboration there. And then I reached out to my friend Bill Sherman, who I met during In the Heights. He co-arranged and orchestrated Heights, and then he composed a show called Fly that I choreographed out of town at La Jolla. and said to Bill, this is a crazy idea, but would you throw some stuff down for me? And so he just dove in with 2 feet. And the thing I love about Bill, which is to the point about collaborators, is he is just funky, and he's rhythmic first, and there are so many pockets to get into, and that's what's most appealing to me as a choreographer. I love melody, of course, but I love the intricacy of syncopation and how high and low notes provide these huge cavities for us to get in. And then within that, it forces the audience to see things in interesting new ways. And so dancing in the pocket is a really big deal for me, and he writes that way. So we composed this entire thing on Zoom, which maybe is a good benefit to COVID that we learned how to really Zoom. But we did a lot of night sessions, and now that we've found our feet in this, I look forward to the next round of us being in the room together fully.
Great. Well, let's set up the first excerpt. If you could just tell us what happens before, and
yeah. So the thing we started with at the Pillow was we're and talk about process for just a second. In Tulsa, we sort of staged the piece as backstory. You followed this group of young people, basically who they were in an idealistic place, entering a horrible situation. 10 months later, boom, they're in the heat of battle. What I realized was, I don't want that. I want to just throw them in the heat of battle. Like, just start in the 11th hour. So what we started at the Pillow was dropping this submarine in the heat of battle. They're being pursued by a ship. Their systems are paralyzed, so they can't shoot back. All they can do is try to hide. All they can try to do is get away and try to fight another day. And there'll have to be an education in this piece that I'm still working out. If another ship sends a ping in the water, the ping goes through the water and bounces off your ship. And as soon as it does that, the enemy know where you are. They know how far away you are. They know what direction you're in. So the ping for the sailors is hell, because they know that eyes are on them and their time is now limited. So in part 1 at the Pillow, it's about 5 minutes long. It's an establishing shot of a dire situation where it's really close quarters. They're a well-oiled machine. They're sleep deprived. They've been underwater for weeks. Like, it's a bad situation. For a moment, they get out of harm's way. At least for a moment, they can sort of exhale. Maybe somebody can take a nap. Maybe somebody can grab a cup of coffee. And in that moment, which is part 2, you sort of have backstory moments where you start to see who these 7 sailors were 6 months ago. What was the heart that they brought to the situation? What was the humanity that they had before they started to lose it under this stress? At the end of that part 2, and all through part 2, Eddie, our lead gentleman, his love at home, Meg, has been coming to him, and the women have been coming to the men in a way that's comforting them, like a blanket. But the men keep sort of pushing them away because they know they cannot get distracted from the job at hand. So where we're going to jump into this is at the end of part 2, where Eddie sees her and feels her in his arms. There's a constant sort of callback to them being on the dance floor in a dance hall. And so that's sort of the gist of where we're jumping off here, and then things aren't going to go so well for them. So, shall we welcome
Yes,
to the stage?
please.
Let's meet the dancers who are going to bring this first part of Never Alone to the stage.
Hi, everyone. My name is Corey Snide.
Hi, I'm Allie Marconi.
Hi, I'm Morgan Marcell.
Hi, I'm Gaby Diaz.
Hello, I'm Reed Luplau.
Hey, I'm Aydin Eyikan.
Hi, I'm Samantha Siegel.
Hi, I'm Marc Heitzman. And I'm Fredric Odgaard.
I see we're all at Samantha's party tonight. So in our piece tonight, 2 of our folks, Allie and Morgan, will be playing 2 of the sailors. And we're going to run up through part 1. I was going to say one other thing, and that was, I don't remember, I'll say it after we come back from the break.
30 degrees to port. Take us down to 80 meters. 30 degrees to port. Down to 80 meters. 80 meters, sir. Just about 8 degrees southwest. Just 8 degrees southwest. Breathe in normally. Take us down. Take us down 100 meters. 100 meters, sir. Up from forward trim to after trim. Suction on forward trim. After trim venting. Take us down 100 meters. 100 meters, sir. Take us to silent run. Yes, sir. 120 meters. 120 meters, sir. 2 degrees, bubble up. 3 degrees, down, bubble. Forward room. 140 meters. 140 meters, sir. Hold course, sir. Course. Take us to 140 meters. Take us to 180 meters. 180 meters. 100 meters. Still. Bow down 10. Stern up 5. Stern up 7. Ventilators off. 190 meters. 200 meters. 220 meters. 230 meters, sir. Depth charge in the water. Fire in aft engine room. Quiet. Shut it off. Fire in battery aft. Battery aft. Open battery. Disconnect switches. Shut it off. Damage report. Quiet. Torpedo hatch is taking on water. Shaft valve leaking. Control. 6 inches of water. Where are they? C-class. Northwest bearing. Second contact. Directly above.
You know this is my favorite song.
Eddie, get your ass up. You know this is my favorite song. You know this is my favorite song. You know this is my favorite song. Eddie, get your ass up.
And that's part one. Come on out, guys. Come on out, come on out. Fabulous, right? So good, so good. Good work, great work. Come down, spread out. I want to work through a couple of things that have been in my head and the past. One of the greatest things about process, as opposed to knowing exactly when your deadline is, like often when your deadline is in front of you, your creative impulse might say that this doesn't work, but the deadline kills you, and you say, but I have to do this anyway. And both at Jacob's Pillow and then in this great past week at Works in Process, there's been this feeling of like, you know what, I was gonna do this thing, but I know in my soul it's not gonna work. So don't do it. Just start something else, even if you're not gonna finish it. And I think that's been this past couple weeks for us working, is we're able to keep asking hard questions. Even if you don't know what the answer is gonna be, you know not to go down the road that is a lie, that is somehow a disappointment. And so a huge thanks to the dancers who are always on the balls of their feet, making changes. And so some of the things that I want to clean and work with them right now is so you can hear some of the thought process. And P.S., one last thing, like that was a tremendous accomplishment for them to jump in, because we haven't even really rehearsed. Like we just finished making something, a draft of something. And so thank you for also the open-mindedness to know that they're finding their way as we go. Every single time is different. So the first thing I want to work on, which is rehearsal clip number 1 upstairs around 3:15, I'm going to look at getting into, we're going to go from the captain's brain. So grab your stools and captain's brain. It's interesting. One of the things that was most daunting to me about this idea, but exciting, is like the idea of silence is a little scary to me. Like I like rhythm and I like sound, but this is a found environment where there's no sound. And if there is sound, a half a mile away, the enemy can hear you. So if like I drop my glasses, like they know where I'm at now. And so as this situation got more pressured, how do you keep the ball up in the air when the volume actually should come down? And I think the answer to that is, what is the volume inside your head? Or like the volume inside your heartbeat. Like we've all been there when you're trying to you run or whatever, and all of a sudden you stop and you're trying to be quiet, and you feel like your own pulse is so loud. How can that other person not hear my pulse?
Like, so what is the soundtrack of stress? Like, what is the soundtrack of concentration? For me and for us here, a lot of the soundtrack of concentration is like click, like like that's the speed of my brain engine working. And so one of the things we're going to show you is along that lines. So what I want to look at is the note that I just gave right before about how the two of y'all come together, and his command to say, we have to go down. And what the sailors know is they're going to go down past the point of being safe in the submarine. And also, just for you to know, I know the sound design is not clear, it's a work in progress. And so the point that is important in the text is that they're going too deep to be safe. And so this moment happens where they go past each other, boom, and like, without saying the word, this happens. But my first note is, this person is the second in command. They have to pass on the command. He doesn't want to take the command because he knows that it's going to be damage. So you resist him more all the way through the way you look back. And so my next note before we run that is, so we get into our tap step, y'all. And then we hear the ping, which is our torture. But now go back this time to sit. And then decide when you feel the punctuation of like the gasket pushing you. And then go down. As opposed to what we had done was the pressure of the ping is making us want to get fetal. Yeah, can you just show that? I'll give you 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. Da, dee, dee, get a gut, dee, dee, da, da, and then they got fetal because this ping is haunting them so much. But okay, now let's stop. They just gave in. That was my choice. We just gave in. So now go, you hate this, you hate this, you hate this. Good. And I'll just give you a cue. There won't be percussion. So tap step. 1, 2, 3. And shoo. Boom. Doom. Cool. Excellent. Let's try that with music. You see that huge difference? Like, I didn't notice that today until we were on an open space and lights were helping us, which they did a great job with. And so all of a sudden now I realize that you always need a glottal. Like, you need to turn open a door to go through the door. Like we need these mile markers, these what I think of as anchor points. So that's A. Then continue through. And just to articulate my huge struggle that we talked a lot about, they're going to ooze into this line. Nobody's stools really move in a submarine. They're bolted. And so the point of this being is that we're all of one mind. Like, we're all in a crappy situation and we don't know if we're going to live. And the idea is that they're right above us and the ship, like crushing metal, is about to crush us. So my huge nervousness was the silence that it took us to get here and whether moving slow could work. Because generally in my work, I like to move faster as the stress level goes up. So it's really hard for me not to move fast when the stress level goes up. And so I want to run that whole section from King's brain, the loud brain, and then all the way into here. And then I want to stop. So I'll call, Charlie, I'll call you down when we're good. New version. Cool. Here we go. On you.
Silent one.
Use your eyes forward,
40 meters, sir. Full course, sir.
And now up.
Take us to 140 meters. Take us to 180 meters. 180 meters.
Great, let's hold there. So that was good, they were good, right? One thing that we've been talking a lot about is that this is a dialogue. Like when we sing a soliloquy or do a monologue, like I'm not singing out loud on the street. Like the thing has gotten so desperate at me that it came to life through a musical existence, and you hear the inside of my brain, or you hear the inside of our hearts. So when we're doing movement like this, and staging like this, it's still the same rule. The audience still has to get in. So like if I'm intense in the moments like this, I'm actually not letting you in. And part of the story that I want to tell is that these are exceptional young people who are working under exceptionally difficult situations. So they're like 20-year-olds. I just said to these folks, I just finished watching Masters of the Air, the TV series. Like, it's unreal that these young people went through that. And so I want to get into everybody. And so what I also have realized is that the audience needs to see my eyes to see my other senses. So if I'm hearing a ping, like if I'm hearing that bolt pop over there, I can't just be like this because you don't really understand it. Like I have to be like this so that you don't see the verb hear, like H-E-A-R. You see the action of how do I feel about what I hear. Does that sort of make sense? And so I think that's part of this. The other part of the eye contact that's really important in this is that we have to know that they're such a good team so that when they ultimately, what you saw, become alone, they leave the confines of teamwork and they feel truly alone, like they're gonna lose, like so many of us do when we're going through conflict. We feel like we're totally alone. That you first have to have camaraderie before you can go on to something else. So let's go to part 2 of this note. So I also realized as soon as I saw the light cue, Pam asked about collaborators, like one ingredient changes how you do everything. Like I hear a sound cue, I change my idea. I hear a light cue, I change my idea. And as soon as they did the sidelight on the portals, it opened up things in a really tremendous way. So the movement was at first this idea of like they're in a solitary confinement that they know by heart, but they wish they could get out of. Like in this desperate hour, they wish they could get out of. But how much do they wish? They wish so big. And right now we're doing this. So it's as small as a submarine is. So what I want it to be is a 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then on 5, go as big as you can get. 5, 6. And then there's a music phrase that I never heard until today. It's 6 and 7 and 8 and. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. Got. And then I'll start the next thing. So 5, 6, 7, 8. 2, 3, as wide as, 1, 2, 3, and 4, without changing anything, as wide as you can go. 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, got. Got. Cool. So watch for that. I think it's going to be better for me, at least. And so the next thing I want you to see is, I had a revelation, and I had to write it down today. And I can't believe without my glasses, but I wrote it down because I'd never thought of this before. Like, I struggle with unison. I never want to dance in unison. But the audience needs it. The audience needs, in a piece of music, for the instruments to come together in the third chorus and all of a sudden everybody's playing in unison. They need movement to come in unison. The story needs to come in unison. In every story, all the characters eventually have to want the same thing. But I want to build really good individuals. So why would they do anything, if I believe them to be true, why all of a sudden are they dancing in unison? They're sailors in a submarine, doing all different jobs. Then I realized today that unison can only work in abstraction. Like, it can only work as an idea. There are 7 sailors who have 7 different jobs, but they all feel fear. There are 7 sailors who all feel like they are going to die. And so this moment that spreads out finally goes into a unison because they all have the same fear. And so we're not seeing them as people anymore. We're seeing them as an idea, a communal idea. And so then what you're going to see after this is, you can tell me if you're going to mark or not, is that it explodes, depth charge in the water explodes. And for just a moment, I need them to go back to their real human people. And then after their humanity, they go back to abstraction again. Yeah, we're going to start from here. We're going to start from scratch. And so here's the other part that I wanted you to see. We set a whole piece of choreography where after the explosions go, like this would be real life, that their movement was big and loose, and it was cool, but it wasn't the right thing. The right thing is, in crisis, what happens next? The person who's in charge has to be a good leader. And so what happens next is the captain reads killing it up there. The captain says damage control, and you hear details. 6 inches of water. This is leaking. This is happening. So there's an exactitude, not unlike George Washington and Hamilton. There's an exactitude in the way he hears detail. So the whole stage is being his exactitude. So rather than everybody else staying themselves, they start to become the way his brain perceives bad news. Cool? So watch, after they go crazy on the floor, and they come back up in here, and you did this click, click step, like just look out for that. And can we go all the way to the breath? Yeah. Great. Here we go. Starting point is gonna be around 180. Yeah, so this is the second marker, Charlie, 415.
Bow down 10, stern up 5.
Be safe.
Sternums. Ventilators off. 190 meters. 200 meters. 220 meters. 230 meters, sir.
So here's our first unison. Ra, da, 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 di, da.
Depth charge in the water. Firing at engine room, Captain. Quiet. Shut it off. Firing battery aft. Open battery disconnect switches. Shut it off.
Captain's brain.
Damage report. Quiet. Torpedo hatch is taking on the water. Shift valve leaking. Control. 6 inches of water.
Amen. Good job. Excellent. Good. Go grab a sip. I now owe them all an extra bottle of wine for that. Go change it up. So one other thing about that crab crawl that Reed did coming down stage, like, I gotta put my shoes back on, I feel horrible now. I have this thing that's on my wall that says, I'll show you a second, that says exaggerate the contradictions. And so with Reed there at the end, he's this intense captain who's taking in these details. How am I gonna salvage these ships? But then he did that crazy thing down on the floor. And so to me, the reason that exists is he's showing the audience how deep he's willing to dig to make the intellect happen. And like, I find that really interesting. And for me at Hamilton, it was an interesting thing because Hamilton's a writer. And so like, I felt in working on Hamilton, that's not easy to portray them like battle, like American Revolutionary War, but it's much harder to portray the difficulty of creating writing, the difficulty of creating mathematical equations that balance budgets. And so in Hamilton, there's a big thing about physicalizing intellect so the audience can witness how hard it is to make it happen. And sort of that idea there, besides the fact that Reed's amazing, it also comes as a prophet of what we learned from other things, from Hamilton.
Fantastic. Wow. You've done so much in this period of time. It's remarkable. Could you just tell us about, you mentioned lighting, tell us about some of the production values that you are hoping to have with this piece.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I am in a phase of my life where I'm trying to do more with a lot less.
Like I'm trying to make theater that has a simplicity about it, primarily a theater that's about people. And so I'm trying to envision smaller groups, but also simpler stage pictures, which actually puts a lot more pressure on lights and projections. With this, there's a great texture about actually seeing these folks dressed like as servicemen. Like as soon as you see people move in a contemporary way, but they look like they're from 1940, it sets our brain off in a really interesting way, like, as you know from Hamilton, same thing in Hamilton. In this, I think lights really play in a very strong way. When we did this at the Tulsa Ballet, I was I was thrilled to have this piece, not this piece, but the former ballet, happen in the same program as Fancy Free. And so Fancy Free was another piece about sailors, two sides of the spectrum. Sailors on a 24-hour leave and sailors in the crunch time of almost dying. And it was interesting because that piece, Fancy Free, is vibrant and the colors are amazing and the lights are wide open. And then we did our piece right after, and we did the entire piece in a hard-edged white box. And it was so beautiful and so different. And as soon as I saw that, I also was like, oh, now the audience can see a 20-year-old in 1942 and understand that person, because it feels contemporary. So I do think in this version of the ballet, it's a black world with black and metal. I do see lights moving, like literally moving, like moving lights floating, because it's an otherworldly thing. I think we haven't talked about the 80-minute thing, but in the 80-minute piece that I hope to make, this first 26 minutes is the first of 3 chapters with no intermission. So it's sort of a triptych that builds on the same characters. And that piece, I think, is going to rely a lot on projection. I think we're at an interesting time with shows like Life of Pi, which had tremendous projection design, that we have the ability to stretch the audience in poetic ways in how people integrate with moving images. And so like I'm really interested, it's about a code breaker, so how can text float in the air? Because she's trying to actually capture text that's invisible. And so like, and for example, if something is a military command like report at 0600 hours, take it or leave it, it's what you have to do. And so there's something really cool about just typewritten text disappearing and forcing the audience to take in text like those soldiers have to take in commands. So I think this piece eventually will have a big projection design.
And the whole piece is set in the submarine, and she appears only through his imaginings?
Yeah, I mean, to me, and maybe we'll talk about this in different stages, the piece is really about within conflict and in times of trial, if your heart is in the right place, we aren't alone in the battle. So even though these sailors are down there and their loves are at home fighting in their own ways, they're all fighting the same battle. And they share each other's hearts, they share each other's wants and goals and ideals. And so this idea for them in the sub is they're so confined, but they need help remembering exactly why they are fighting so that in the ultimate times of trial, they can make it through that dark period. So for the first half of this piece, they're kind of pushing away these visions. And as you'll see in this piece, he starts to pull her closer because he actually now is understanding, I need her with me all the time as I'm fighting. Just like we are in relationships and in teams, you build something together so that you can walk side by side each other and not even have to look at each other because you just know you want the same thing. So ultimately, that's where this piece ends. It ends with the sense of, I'm not together, but like believing in something that you can't see, faith. I have faith this is going to work because I know this person so well.
I wanted to ask, in the documentary you say that one theme that unites the works you've been a part of is that they are real people crunched under extraordinary pressures, and you're interested in what do people do under extraordinary pressure. Can you say more about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've tried to champion and sponsor stories that were not dramatic enough. And it's not like people always have to die or something. I'm not saying that. But the situation has to be pressure cooked enough that people have to rise and become heroes. They have to face conflict that seems insurmountable. And then in the face of that conflict, they have to choose uncharacteristic behavior to overcome it. And so that sense of passage then in that character is great. So the more pressure you can put on somebody, the better it is. And so I set myself up with a piece like this because the confinement is so clear. Like the pressure, the water pressure, everything about being in the submarine has so much pressure about it. And I think ultimately, if we do our job well in the theater, and I'm going to speak as a theater maker, not as a dance maker, if we do our job well as story makers, the audience, the story is universal enough and honest enough so that the audience sees something in it that resonates in them. They recognize something. They say, oh, I've felt that pain in my life of divorce, of death, of this, of that. And they see the character overcome it or process it or, as a cautionary tale, fail in the face of it. But they recognize it so that it can inspire them to change. It can inspire them to at least ruminate on those ideas as they leave the theater. And so I think that in all of our lives, we face unbelievable pressure. We face unbelievable circumstances. It's not a walk in the park. That doesn't mean life is not amazing. Life is amazing, but you have to go over hurdles all the time. And so I think it's good to see the hurdles and to see the overcoming of hurdles on stage. And so that's why, long story short, like as a dance maker, I don't trust the dance, I trust the character and I trust the story. And so as I'm staging, it's like always a question of how is this dance step an honest representation?
And I think in order to make those stakes be palpable for an audience, each dancer has to have stakes, going on inside of them. How do you work with dancers so that each of them have stake in the work?
Yeah, I think a big part of it is creating an ensemble, not a chorus. So like in this, even as simple in this, is that one person is the navigation. One person pushes the button up and down to make that ship go up and down. One person is the mechanic. So all of a sudden they have different archetypal physicalities that can pull into. That navigator needs to get his stuff together. So all of a sudden his physicality is like this all the time because he can't miss it. The guy who's going to push the button to make us live or die has to have a different entry point. So all of a sudden they have a different physicality to enter the topic, to enter the conversation. So that helps. And in that way, I cast the same way. Like, I don't want two of the same people. I want lots of different people. And then in that conversation, I love to say, lean on this thing that you already know really well. Or let me push you this way to do this thing that you don't know so well. So like, I love that, and as a dancer, that's what I wanted, and frankly, I stopped dancing early because I wasn't being asked to do that. I was asked to be sort of in a chorus.
Right.
And I didn't want to be faceless. I wanted to be an integral part of telling an important story. And that doesn't mean that we can't dance in unison. We dance in unison when these disparate members of community come together to say one thing that's important. And then all of a sudden, there's a selflessness to unison dancing because we actually all know what we're saying. But first, we need, like Hamilton's another good example, a wide variety of community to come together. Because that's, again, contradiction. All these people with different opinions who all want the same thing. That's an exciting story.
Absolutely. So do you want to set up the last section for us,
Yes. Are you
please?
still pantsing back there? Come on out, come on out, come on out. So we're doing this last part. So this was a real challenge to me, and again, I'm gonna say thanks to two things, the pillow and to Works in Process, because the third part of this was set to two big swing songs, big, energetic, robust swing songs. And I was at the pillow, and I said, I can't start this swing song, because it's not honest, it's not real. If I believe Eddie, this person in the submarine, there's no way under where you just saw him, he could depart to a dream ballet in a speakeasy where Sing 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 is playing. It's not going to work. He can't do a costume change and put on a hat. And so all of a sudden, I took the pre-production of the fast dancing and I played it over this really slow version of Blue Skies on a piano. And I was like, that's what I want to do. And so luckily, there was no deadline at the pillow, so I didn't have to do it. I could just know that it was the better way to do it, and I could start working on it. So our big job this week was doing this assignment, dancing an entire number fast, 3.5 minutes, over music that is slow. Like, I've never done that in my career before, and it's definitely not perfect yet, but it's a good first stab. And again, for you to be on the inside of the brain, the reason is you're seeing the memory, but you're hearing it through the context of his present situation. And so that rub is really important. And it also exaggerates, as you're going to see, the fact that there's tremendous distance between them. She's not really there. And good life is not really there. And oxygen is not really there. And so that's sort of what this rub is about. So we're going to review a couple things. It was a real trial and error thing. So they hear one tempo in their heads, and then we find these anchor points where we dance together, and then they hear the tempo in their heads again. And maybe eventually there's like spotting lights and lights in the wings that blink on tempo. We haven't figured that far out in advance yet. Let's do our lift call. So I'll give you 5, 6, 7, 8, sky, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The sky. 5, 6, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's why we rehearsed. Good job. All good? Mark, you good? Okay. So again, that's not the tempo they're going to dance to, but that's like 180 beats that we're trying to hear. Let's do Sky. Like this is what dancers do before the show. They have to do the lift call. They do a lift call, so they practice the things that they're going to throw passionately. I'll just give you ready and blue, shoom, shoom, and. Great, amazing. Okay, let's get ready to go. So what you're going to see now is blue skies, and just for us to know, we put a nice closure to the piece. But it would actually go into 3 more minutes where it doesn't close quite yet.
You know this is my favorite. You know this is my favorite. Eddie, get your ass up.
Thank you, Andy Blankenbuehler. Thank you, dancers. That was just wonderful. Thank you to all of you for being here tonight. We need this audience to give us energy to take this piece forward. So thank you. Thanks to everyone.
Thanks so much, everybody. Get home safe. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.